Здравствуйте, меня зовут Helzilla. In this video, I'm going to go nuclear because over the past 2 weeks since this invasion started, I've had to hear a lot of nonsense. And it's only gotten much worse. People are just making stuff up. No, Putin is not fighting the deep state or going after biolabs. This is kind of the stupid stuff that a 6-year-old would make up. Luckily, I have heard a lot of people with common sense that can tell, bullshit when they hear it. And there are also people like me who happen to have been into this whole part of the world that contains Ukraine and Russia for quite a while. Like I say, I've gotten into this part of the world before through the music over there, and I also have a lot of movies and other things all around the house from that part of the world. These girls are Russian, Lena, Katina, and Yulia Volkova. Я немного говорю по-русски. I speak a little Russian. I also study Ukrainian, and I do study every day. I follow a lot of vloggers over in Russia and Ukraine and watch the TV shows as well as the news. And I've been following this conflict for quite a while. So, you can't just make shit up and expect someone not to have any common sense or someone not to know anything about this part of the world. Let me try to give you an abbreviated version of me watching this unfold. It started last spring in 2021, a buildup of troops, Russian troops, and equipment around the Ukrainian border. We heard about this more and more as the year went on, and a lot more at the beginning of this year, 2022. What the government or the regime in Russia were saying were, they have 3 primary security concerns. There's not going to be an invasion. It's just Western hysteria trying to drum up all of this talk about invasion. The Russian-controlled media over there and over here, like RT and whatever, were saying the same stuff. The guy with the bow tie and Saskia Taylor. There's not going to be any invasion. It's just Western hysteria and Russia-phobia. There was supposed to be an invasion yesterday. They even said, they show this one shot of tanks on a bridge or something and claiming that they were going back to their base and saying the troops were withdrawing. Well, they certainly haven't withdrawn, have they? So this was all their own actions exposed their own lies. And the whole time I was rooting for Russia. Russia has always had this stigma, and I want them to get out of it. I've found a lot of things in Russia and Ukraine that I've liked. A lot of people. And I want them to be regarded as, some of the best countries on the planet. Particularly with Russia, which has had the stigma. I want them to get out from underneath that. I want people to get into Russian music and movies as well, and everything that Russia has to offer. I want them to want to go to St. Petersburg, Moscow, Vladivostok, all these great places. And now, they don't have a chance to get out from underneath that stigma because of what Putin is doing to not only Ukraine, but his own country. He has set them back decades. Some of the Russians refer to his regime as a gang. They're a kleptocracy. They rip the people off, make themselves billionaires, and who knows what goes on in their head as their ego explodes and think they're the next czars or whatever to conquer the world. So no, Putin is not some superhero going after the deep state or going after biolabs. That's stuff that a child would make up. Just complete nonsense. If you have any common sense, it sounds like bullshit because it is. And then there are people like me who actually have been into this part of the world for a while, or you might have just gotten interested in this part of the world, and you've discovered there's layers and layers and layers to all of this, and you're getting really into the history. You can't believe there's any merit or any valid reason for what Putin is doing, because his own actions have exposed his own lies. Like I say, I'm very pro-Ukraine and Russia, and for Russia, I'm just always rooting for them to get out from underneath this stigma and be regarded as one of the greatest countries on the planet. You know, a place that people are really interested in the culture and they want to go there. They want to get to know the people. Now, let me go to when this all really started to unravel. Putin recognizes Donetsk and Lugansk as independent regions. And the world is in uproar, but I'm still kind of hoping this can work out somehow favorably for Russia. I mean, maybe this war that's been going on since 2014, some people make a good case for it being a proxy war that Russia had instigated, this separatist movement, an insurgency that Russia had instigated, whatever. I'm still hoping that somehow Russia is not completely the bad guy here. Maybe Putin's just going to go in there, as he says, as peacekeepers, and now that the Russian military is officially there, nobody's going to fuck with them because they'd be officially fucking with Russia. So they go in there and just keep the peace, right? Nobody's shooting back and forth at each other, or maybe. But the next day, he does another speech. That first speech was like 55 or 60 minutes or something like that, where he announced he recognized these independent regions. The next speech, we heard that they had closed the airspace between Russia and Ukraine, so it seems like it's going to go down. And then he makes a speech, announces this special military operation in Donbass is what he's calling it, to try and pretend that it's not an invasion and it's not a war. It's just a special military operation, like it's some kind of reality TV show that everybody can root for. The good guys, which are supposed to be the Russian military forces driving around with the Z on their tanks and all that. But in this next speech, that's when he said some shit that started to really alarm people, besides the fact that he was having an invasion. He says, if anybody interferes with us, there will be consequences beyond anything you've seen in history. We are prepared for any outcome. That's when people felt like they got a little bit of a taste of a nuclear threat. Consequences beyond anything you've seen in history. We're prepared for any outcome. Now, as far as what Putin has said before about a nuclear war, he did say that Russia would only use nuclear weapons in response to a nuclear attack. And so Russians would rise to the heavens as martyrs because, they only retaliated against the country who initiated the attack. There are some other things he said about nuclear war, or maybe his outlook, that I'll mention. Regarding NATO, he knows that they don't have enough forces to go against the full force of NATO. And so then they would have to retort to nuclear weapons, and then nobody would win. However, there's something else he said before, which indicates he may have kind of a zero-sum outlook on life. He said something before about he wouldn't want to live in a world where there's no Russia. So that kind of makes me think that if he cannot succeed in whatever grandiose goals he has as some kind of conqueror of other countries, he would not be willing to accept defeat. It's just, those are what you could kind of read between the lines is maybe there. Just chew on that. Anyways, there totally is an invasion. When this happened, it actually had a very strong effect on me, because a year ago I only lost a pet, but it was like this year I lost 2 whole countries. And it totally is a war. It is an invasion. It is an attack on the people of Ukraine. Whatever you want to hold against the people of Ukraine, or whatever kind of fiction you've created, it's all bullshit. It doesn't merit what Putin is doing, not only to Ukraine, but the people in his own country. He's not fighting the Nazis and saving Ukraine from genocide. He's not a champion for human rights in his own country. So some of you people who are, he's, a hero and he's doing the right thing and he's trying to correct all these human rights wrongs in Ukraine. No, he doesn't even care about human rights in his own country. As far as the Nazis in Ukraine, the Azov battalion has been much defamed by left-wing media in the Western world. So you fuckers out there like Vox and Vice and all that shit, who might today be a little irked that people are saying Ukraine is all run by Nazis, including Putin saying that, you are a little bit to blame for that, because you really exploited the fact that this Azov battalion has maybe a few extremists in it. Now, I've read a lot about the Azov battalion, and I'm looking for Nazis. I'm looking for these extremists. Remember that I am very pro both of these countries, but particularly for Russia, I want them to be somehow doing the right thing. But it's only said to be like 10 or 20% maybe of Azov battalion could be considered, that extreme. Would that merit invading an entire country? If that is true, then you're saying that Putin has every right to invade any country on the fucking planet, because there are extremists and racists everywhere. And racism is not just, I don't like this person's color or whatever. There's a lot of ethnic differences within like one color of people. If you're, a mix of races, like a lot of us are, you hear all kinds of bullshit from all sides. Just, there's assholes everywhere. I think I've said that, and it doesn't give you the right to go into a country and act like, hey, I'm the champion. You think there are no extremists or racists in Russia? You think no crimes against humanity or violence has ever been committed by Russians based on somebody being a race they didn't like? I truly doubt it. If Putin can invade any country, then he could surely, based on, those kinds of things, then he could surely come over to the U.S. and say, well, there's some Klan members over here or whatever, neo-Nazis over here or whatever. I mean, the hypocrisy I'm hearing from people is just ridiculous. And as many people have pointed out, Zelensky does come from a Jewish heritage. The battalions, Ukraine does not have as big a military as Russia. And you could see now why they would want to have a bigger military. So that's why they graduated these battalions up into their military to protect their country, regardless of whoever they might think is a thug in the battalion or whatever. Now, I want to touch on some other hypocrisies. You know, he's invading another country. Over here in America, we rightfully complain about, you know, the invasion going on at our borders with illegal immigration. You don't just, you know, sneak into another country and go, here I am. Have you ever looked into moving to another country? It's usually by merit. And they certainly want to know, you know, if you have a criminal record or anything like that. So there is valid reason for concern about people sneaking over the borders, especially a lot of them. Hundreds of thousands of them. So we rightfully complain or are concerned about that in our own country. But Ukraine gets invaded by Putin's military with weapons, bombs, bullets, killing people, destroying their country, their houses, the places they work, destroying their country, killing children, animals, all of that. And some of you fucking idiots out there are, I don't know, cosplaying, you know, like, oh, he's the, or LARPing, he's the hero, he's doing the right thing, he's going in there. Yeah, you're full of shit, you're hypocrites. You would not like that if somebody was doing that in your own fucking country. And then people say, oh, the only reason that some civilians are getting killed is because they have weapons now. Or so they're kind of used as human shields. They have a much smaller military. You're talking about, you know, people are just trying to live their lives one day, then their country gets invaded by the military. They got bombs flying into their house. I have seen all of this stuff. People getting killed by these bombs, people getting shot, their bodies are mangled, they're burned. All kinds of people, people of every age, women, men, children, animals, their pets, their whole country being destroyed by all this shit. Of course, you're going to pick up a weapon if you can to defend yourself, and the government says, yeah, we're going to hand out weapons, so come get one. Over 1 million people have fled the country, but there are reasons not everybody can. They may be taking care of somebody who can't really move around, they don't have the mobility, or they're just going to go, well, where am I going to go? Have you ever been homeless? I can't imagine trying to go from one country to the next with absolutely nothing in a world where you can't even just live in your country. That's, you know, you just give it up to somebody else who just comes in and go, okay, I'm going to take this over. I'm going to just destroy all your military so nobody can defend you. Is that a world worth living in? It seems like it would be a world worth fighting against. So there are a lot of people coming from all over the world to go there and fight against this action of Putin's, this invasion. And again, the hypocrisy. In America, you know, it's said often, there's a gun behind every blade of grass. So we would all pick up arms if somebody invaded our country. But then you got idiots pretending like there's people over there getting killed because they picked up a weapon, because now they're armed. They armed their citizens. We would do the same fucking thing. And maybe the last thing I want to talk about as far as the hypocrisy, at least in this video, the fact that people are saying all these favorable things about this tyrant invading Ukraine. You know, like I said, it doesn't matter what you have against Ukraine or whatever. There is absolutely no way you could justify what Putin is doing to Ukraine or his own country by doing all this shit. In our country, rightfully, we are complaining more and more about more and more tyranny from the government or from big tech and all the censorship. So rightfully, we complain that there's increasing censorship over here, government tyranny mandates, or they want to take your guns away or whatever. And yet, some of you champion what Putin is doing. He is a tyrant. Do you realize that he rules his country with much worse tyranny than we're even starting to see over here? You can get jail time for sharing a post that goes against the government over there. You can get 15 years in prison if they don't like the way you're covering this war, the way you make the military look. This is for the press, the media. 15 years in prison if the regime does not like the way you're covering this invasion. A lot of people in Russia are afraid to speak out against the government because they don't want any trouble with the law, or they don't want jail time. That's called tyranny. So, the hypocrites, again, over here. Yay, Putin. Go get him. You wouldn't even like to live under the same rulership that he rules his country with. So again, there's a lot of people out there talking bullshit. Now, as far as Donbass, now it's believed by many people that this is a proxy war that Putin's regime instigated, an insurgency, maybe to try and do what he did with Crimea. Now, obviously, that went a lot easier than trying to take over the rest of this pretty large country of Ukraine. And Ukraine wasn't going along with the Minsk agreements because you could see their point of view. Most countries don't recognize what happened with Crimea as being legit. So they still think that's theirs. And now, if they would follow the Minsk agreements, that would concede part of their country as well to Putin's regime. People talk about there's all this whataboutism. What about this? What about the U.S. did that? What about NATO did this? What about, let's just say, there's no excuse for a lot of this shit. And I think a lot of people started to build up an animosity towards NATO in the West, actually. I'm hoping that this all gets worked out diplomatically. There's not ever going to be an invasion or a war. I never felt like any of the world leaders, including Putin, tried to make an agreement. They didn't try hard enough. I don't know. We don't know. We can't say whatever they came up with wasn't reasonable because none of their solutions or negotiations were made public. Even Putin said that he was not supposed to disclose what he was offered, but that seems strange because it doesn't seem like, well, they told me not to say, so I don't think he really cares. And then here's the thing with the whole NATO bit. A lot of us in the West have actually been questioning NATO as well. Regardless, one of Putin's security concerns was supposed to be all this NATO getting closer and closer to him. Well, by invading Ukraine, which was not a NATO country, he actually brings himself closer to NATO countries. So again, his own actions expose his own lies. There's a lot of hypocrisy, and it doesn't make any sense. Let's say he's done all this to Ukraine, but he only wants this Donbass region. So how does the NATO thing go away? After all of this, wouldn't there be an initiative to make Ukraine part of the alliance so that there's no more bullshit? He did this with Crimea before, then he did it with this region. So why would he not try it again with another part of the country or the entire rest of the country? And it is a ruse. You can see through it. He's trying to take over the whole country or install a puppet government. There's even things that they have said themselves that, pretty much lay that out. So that's it for this video. There's going to be a lot of things that I wish I had said. But this is a lot of stuff to talk about, especially off the top of your head, and especially after 2 weeks of all this stuff. So every day I think about making this video because I do follow a lot of political commentators on YouTube, and I've had to listen to a lot of nonsense, and it makes me, want to give my perspective some more. But after 2 weeks of putting this off, it's a lot of stuff to try and cover off the top of your head. So in some other videos, I can talk about whatever I missed or whatever I wanted to save for other videos. Until next time, I just wish peace and freedom for everybody in Ukraine and Russia. Мир и свободу Украине и России. Until next time, пока-пока.